Hey, this is your indie fantasy author, Melinda Kucsera, and I decided to split the episode that we had last week, which was Fantasy Learn More, and our special guest was Freya Victoria. And in that episode, we talked about The Forgotten Beast, which is book one of The Forgotten Ones, and a lot of other things. But at the end of the interview, the last like 20 or 30 minutes, Freya started talking about her podcast that she does and some interesting tips and tricks for podcasting and also social media management and things that she does. And it was such a cool conversation that I decided to split it off so that the Fantasy Lore and More episode about the Forgotten Beast could just be about the book and all the things that are sort of book related, when it'll be on sale, when will the next book be out, like concentrating on that, and to split out the conversation about the podcast that she does and some of the tools that she uses and some of the other advice that she gives out into a separate episode. So now it is my pleasure to present to you the rest of our chat, and that's and this special presentation of that. And I hope that you find it as useful as I did. I wanted to break it out also so that if you needed to come back and refer to this, because you find the advice helpful or it's not something you need right now, but something that you can use in the future, that it's easier to find. So I hope you enjoy the rest of our chat. So here it is.
Seems like time. I for anybody who has never watched any of my social media, I work a day job and I narrate full time and I write.
And you have a podcast
And
as
I have
well,
3
which I want you to
podcasts.
plug. Oh, you have 3?
Yes.
Do tell, because I only know about the one that I came on.
So Freya's Fairy Tales is the one that you came on, and that is a podcast where I talk to authors about their writing process. Personally, as a reader, I found it fascinating as granted, I had started writing at the point that I started the podcast, but I found it fascinating to learn about the authors and kind of the why and how for like how they come up with their stories. Do they get their ideas from songs, dreams, movies, TV shows? Like, where do these ideas come from? How long does it take them to write their drafts? What did they do after they wrote their first draft? I like knowing the why and how of things. And so that's what Freya's Fairy Tales is about. It goes through, depending on how many books the author has. Sometimes I just talk about their first book and how long that process took them. Sometimes I can talk about how their process has changed over time. Sometimes I go completely off script and we talk about hair color or whatever. Like it's kind of a free for all. So that's Freya's Fairy Tales. I also have 2 that are interconnected and tied together. Bite at a Time Books I host as Brie Carlisle, which is kind of my like nonfiction and nicer persona. That is like basically classic novel audiobooks. So every day a episode drops of a different classic novel. Right now we're going through Great Expectations. This is season 26. So that is 25 other books I have also done. And if you go all the way back to the beginning, when I started, right after I started narrating with The Secret Garden, you can hear the progression of my narrating abilities as well. So that one, and then its companion one is Bite at a Time Books Behind the Story, where I talk about the authors that are writing these stories and what was going on in their life while they were writing their stories. How did they get their books published? Did they self-publish? All the things that Wikipedia knows about these authors. And then so that one kind of releases when a new book releases. I'll talk about that author. I'm a little bit behind on Charles Dickens because of time constraints, but there are a few Charles Dickens episodes out. So yeah, those and that all of my podcasts are available wherever you listen to podcasts. So you can search Freya's Fairy Tales or Bite at a Time Books. Again, if you're on my website, there are links to all of those, because even though I host Bite at a Time as Brie, I have all the links for it also on Freya's website. So
And she's gonna send me links, so there will be some links below.
I will send you all the links. Okay.
We're adding to your homework after this episode.
There's a link for this and this and this and this.
See, you think you leave school and you leave homework behind, but that is not the case.
I did this
you
to
don't
myself. I did this to
good.
myself. I did this to myself.
That's right. If you don't give me all the goods at sign up, I ask you in the podcast for it. and then readers, listeners can hold you accountable like they click on the show notes. Is it there? Did she send it?
And my name is pronounced Freya Victoria.
Oh, that's pretty. Because I forgot to ask you before we started, and then I was like, oh
Freya
God, a
Victoria.
name. I don't want to mispronounce it.
I had someone pronounce it weird one time, and I'm like, "How did you even get?" I'm like, "How did you?" Who knows? My legal name is one of those like you will never get it right legal names, and so like it's so much easier to work under Freya Victoria, where almost no one butchers it. So
Now I gotta hear it because like people butcher my name all the time, but like,
well, I don't share that.
oh, okay.
I just in the last couple weeks finally told everybody in my real life what name I write and narrate under. But I have not backtracked because of my day job where I occasionally have background checks run. I don't need all of it tied together with the world. So
I see. I see. Whereas if you Google me, like my LinkedIn profile and my resume comes up, I am a real person. That is my I
yeah.
really am Melinda Kucsera. When
If
I
you
wouldn't write under a name with random silent letters otherwise.
Yeah, if you Google my legal name, you will only find me. I am the only person of that name in the entire world. If you Google Freya Victoria, you will find me and an ASMR person that also has an OnlyFans. So, so when Google alerts come up of Freya Victoria, I'm constantly getting inappropriate pictures found on. And I'm like, oh no,
Oh,
other
wow.
other
All
me's
right.
doing things.
So if you stumble upon the OnlyFans, the ASMR, that is not the Freya Victoria
No,
who is
that is
writing
not me.
the fairy tale books.
However, she was not narrating audiobooks when I started narrating audiobooks. I don't think she does now because only my stuff comes up under my name. And she didn't own her domain to her name. So that's on her, not on me. And I own it now. So it's mine.
How did you like what made you decide on Freya Victoria? There's a meaning behind the name or
So my husband is Norwegian and my last name for legally is Norwegian. And so Freya is the Norse goddess of love. So when I started narrating romance, um Freya made sense. Victoria, my sister actually picked it. I couldn't come up with a name that made sense that I liked with it. So my sister actually picked Victoria. So, and I thought they sounded really pretty together. And we have been Freya Victoria for almost 2 years now. So,
that's really cool. I'm always fascinated by people who have pen names because like I mean I write under my real name, so
yeah.
I
For me,
just
it was
yeah.
the day job occasionally runs background checks. Also, so like for Brie Carlisle, I told everybody pretty early, I think like a month into the podcast, I told everybody like about Bite at a Time books and Brie Carlisle and all of that. And at the time I was only narrating nonfiction. But then we talked about the church stuff at the beginning. And so when I started narrating romance, I was like, I don't necessarily want the judgment. So I made another name and I have done all the fiction under Freya. And now Freya is I haven't narrated a book for Audible under Brie in like 2 years. So
I see. I see. That's interesting. Like I said, I'm always like deeply curious about like people who use pen names and why and like
it was
like
partially family
how
and
does
partially day job.
right, right. And my day job knows that I write fantasy books. They randomly ask me in meetings every once in a while how the books are going. It's
I have
a little
my
weird,
day
but
job. They know about my podcast. They know about the first podcast, which was so the first podcast was Bite at a Time Books. I started that in October of 21. And then in January of 22, I started Behind the Story. And then in April of 22, I started Freya's Fairy Tales. So it was kind of like a domino effect of podcasts collecting. I haven't started a new one since April of 22, though. We have stopped at 3 for now.
I still can't imagine how you do 3 podcasts. I have just 1.
Well, I'm insane. So
How many episodes do you do, like, for each of them per week?
So Freya's Fairy Tales is one every Monday. And that one is I split each author interview into 2 parts. So I get 2 weeks out of each author. So that one is on Mondays. I'm typically preparing it on Sunday, the day before. But I
How
did
do
a
you split them
time
in half? Because like, when you told me you're doing that, I'm like, "How is that gonna work?"
I listen to because I do have kind of like a series of questions that I
Mhm.
follow, and so I'll typically wait until, like, I've asked a question and you've answered the question, and then I will, like, cut it off before I ask the next question. So where there's, like, a
I
logical
see.
break in the conversation is where I will somewhere, hopefully in the middle. So that's where I just do it somewhere in the middle. Um,
I see, 'cause I don't mine is such a free for all. I don't think I could
yeah,
do that. I'd
and
have
it
to have
kind
an
of
actual format.
right, right.
I'm
Um,
sorry, go on.
and then Bite at a Time books behind the story, that one I just do when a new author I'm, like, reading their book, so, like, that one could be once a month, it could be once every 6 months, it kinda depends on, like, am I working on a series or is it doing a one-off book for an author or whatever the case may be, so that one's kind of a more sporadic airing, and then Bite at a Time books is every single day. So that one I typically record Monday through Friday, 2 chapters every day in the mornings. So today, I actually had to because I'm trying to bank enough episodes to get us through Christmas vacation. So today I had to record the 3 chapters I didn't get done during Monday through Friday.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. So it releases every day, that podcast?
Mhm. Every single day, new chapter of a classic novel. So right now, today was like chapter, let's see, 49, no, 39 of Great Expectations. Tomorrow will be chapter 40.
Wow, that's insane. I've done on here actually, I've done as many as 4 episodes a week on here, all of them interviews. That was a lot. We've gone down to a maximum of 2 episodes per week now. Is
Yeah, now when I'm
with
doing
a full-time job, it's
interviews,
hard to
like,
handle.
when I'm scheduling interviews, I only schedule interviews for Freya's Fairy Tales on Saturdays, and I have my calendar thing limited to it'll only accept 2 interviews per day. Because if I get more than I did at the beginning, I was like, "Just however many you can schedule," and it was way too much. So typically for 2 and then
Yeah.
days that I have, like, next week, I have a haircut appointment, I have the whole day blocked out, no one can schedule an interview that day. Plus the fact that I'm scheduled several months out for interviews, um, or like I've interviewed a bunch of people that their episodes haven't aired yet. I think yours hasn't aired yet.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. I think you said January, so
Yeah, yeah, so I am interviewing now for episodes in, like, April or May of next year, so, like, it's I just kind of bank them, and then I'll tell you, like, "Hey, here's when your episode airs," then I'll be like, "Hey, your episode's airing tomorrow." Like
let me know, and if you could give me, like, a short a clip from it, I wanna do a quick little podcast thing and link to it because I think it could
okay.
be kinda fun.
Yeah, I
I've
send,
seen
like
other podcasters do that, and I think that could be kinda fun, like
okay, yeah, I can send you the audio ahead of time, or I can
yeah,
send you
just some kinda excerpt, and,
okay.
if you wanna, like, put some little, like, I don't know, intro or, like, something, and then I can do a little thing, and then I'll play that thing, and we segue out, and that we just have a short little I mean, however long it ends up being, like a little episode, like a what do they call that? Teaser?
Yeah, so
Preview?
I use Headliner, which is a, website that, if you have the paid plan because you have a lot of hours of podcasts every week, you can be on the paid plan and they will do my YouTube videos for me for the podcast. And they also do little like snippets for social media for me. So I will email all of those clips to you the
Yeah.
morning of, along with any like when I go listen through the audio and make sure that I pull out any like, dogs barking or whatever. I will also make like graphics with like quotes from the episode as well that I use on social media throughout the week. Um, so yeah, I try to do what I can, but also I do a lot of things, and so
Yeah.
when like things like Headliner, I will pay for convenience for me. So it listens to the episode and it pulls out snippets, and sometimes I have to go repick snippets because it pulls like only the fairy tale at the end or something. I just had that happen to me like 2 weeks ago, where like all the snippets were me talking in the fairy tale at the end of the episode, and I'm like, no, we want the author talking, not me.
That's funny. Yeah, so give me something and we'll that could be kinda fun, like, I've
Yeah,
never done I haven't done
definitely.
that before, but, like, I think that could be really fun. Um, send people over to hear the rest of it.
Yep. That's I will send all of that to you the mornings of. So it's I split each one into 2 weeks, so it's 2 weeks in a row, which makes my life easier that I'm not doing. I can't even imagine having to do like multiple like an author every week. That's
I
that's
mean
a
I
lot of
mean,
work.
I was doing author interviews, I was doing 4 a week, 2 on Saturdays, 1 on Thursday, 1 on Friday, and it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
So
Yeah,
I've
so now
done
it's max 2 per week, and I can handle that, 1 on Friday,
yeah.
1 on Saturday, but, yeah, and if you wanna include anything about your podcast in your own words, feel free.
Oh, that's actually all on the link that I'll give you. All the
I mean, y n
descriptions.
for the well, no, I mean for when we do the teaser preview,
Oh, yeah,
whatever we're doing.
I typically do, like, an intro into the episodes, and so I'll send that to you as well.
That's yeah,
Yeah.
something that so that
Like,
people get kind of the context.
here's what we're gonna be talking about, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, my intro is much longer than yours, but I do an intro.
I'm
That's
you
why I
think
don't do
after
it on the podcast because I'll be like, "We're gonna talk about this and this and this and this," which I pulled while I was listening back to because I don't know, it's so loose formed. I'm like, I have no idea what we're gonna end up talking about the whole time. So, and then you want to pick something to say where it's like, what on earth did she have to say about that? Like, you want to pick these things that they're gonna want to go listen to it to see what the heck we were talking about when you said, you know, at one point, one of the episodes, I was talking about Zeus and how, like, he cheated on his wife all the time. Like, so I used a clip that I said from that, and I'm like, for me, I'd be like, "What on earth were they talking about that was said?"
Yeah. That's cool. So there's a thing called headliner because I'm always like I want to do more like promotion on
Yeah, I
social
think,
media, but I'm like
um
some of these episodes get long, and trying to find like a good clip from it is like I could be hunting for hours.
so when I have to go back in and pick audio, I can typically tell from the waveforms, like, whose audio is whose, and so I'll typically just, like, move it and drop it and, find a section where it makes sense to stop. But yeah, Headliner, I think they have a free version because I have so much audio every single week, I have to have the paid version because mine is insane, but they handle for one payment, I can get all of my podcasts in there, so, um
That's really cool. I hope this knowledge benefits someone out there. I'm leaving this all in the final podcast because it's such a neat thing, and I don't hear it
Yeah, so
discussed anywhere.
life-saving, if you are also insane and you do too many things, life-saving things for me, Headliner for creating snippets, and it also works, there's audiobook narrators that use it for their audiobook narrator clips too. I use Vista Social to schedule all of my social media stuff. They will also schedule TikToks, which not every social media scheduler will do. So what I like about Vista Social is you pay per account instead of like a big lump sum for like 20 accounts included. So you pay per how many accounts you have. And when you have multiple podcasts and you also write and you also narrate, you have a whole lot of social media accounts that you need to be included. So I have one login and everything is grouped by like all of my Bite at a Time books is all together. So I can look at all that and schedule all of the social media for that for however far out I want to go. Same with I have like all my Brie Carlisle accounts in there, all of my author and narrator stuff for Freya Victoria in there, and then the Freya's fairy tale stuff in there. Those are my two like life-saving things, Headliner and then Vista Social, so I can get everything scheduled as quickly as possible. And Vista Social would work if you're an author, if you're just you could be a social media influencer that needs to schedule your posts. You could be um a narrator that likes to schedule your posts. You could be a business that needs to schedule your posts, but like any social media scheduler, I've tried a few. Vista Social's my favorite.
That's really cool. There are a whole bunch out there, but they
Yes.
all they all have their own sort of take on it. And
Right.
sometimes it
So,
works with your business, sometimes it doesn't.
yeah. So I switched from Loomly, which I was using over my mom uses Hootsuite. Hootsuite? Yeah, that's what it's called. And Loomly was cheaper, but what I didn't like is they didn't allow TikTok scheduling. So Vista Social allowed for TikTok scheduling. And so I switched over, and then it was like a third of the price or something ridiculous of Loomly. And I'm like, well, yeah, we're going to switch to that. So, I mean, they all have their weird
Mhm.
learning curve, like every software ever. Um, but it's worked for me. I've been using it for almost a year now. And I really like it. So,
That's really cool. Thank you for giving us those helpful tips. I like to get those whenever possible. Life is hard. If somebody's got a cheat code for it or got
yes,
some
yes.
advice, send
Yeah.
it.
Those are my life-saving thing. I log into Loomly and schedule my social media every morning. I do
You
in the
mean
last
Vista?
couple Yeah, Vista, sorry. I have started, like, a couple weeks ago, I'm like, "We're gonna schedule all the podcast stuff a week at a time," and then because I like sometimes my narrator stuff changes day to day, where I might think I'm going live every day this week. On Tuesday, it might be, "Oh, no, I can't go live for the rest of the week." So I like to do those the morning of, just in case. But for the podcast, like, those aren't changing on a day-to-day basis, so
Yeah,
those
that's
are
true.
you get the videos and then, um they're the same throughout the week. So
Then and you do a lot. Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that you're doing? That's just
No,
incredible.
no, that's it. I think.
That's quite the list. That as my mind is still blown by all that.
I always
But
tell people though, like, it may seem insane, but 1, I'm a little bit crazy, and 2, like, I added everything one at a time. So, like, I had my day job, obviously, already before I started everything. And so I have that where I'm on more like an on-call type situation for that. So that's why I was able to start narrating full time. So then I added the narrating, and then I added the podcasting, which when it was one podcast and I wasn't really narrating a lot, it was really easy to incorporate. And then I incorporated a second podcast, and then I started writing, and I was writing for only 10 minutes a day at the beginning. And so incorporating 10 minutes a day, even if that's I go to bed 10 minutes later, that's easy. And then I added the next podcast, and then I started writing a lot more a day. So it's everything has been slowly over time, get used to something and then add something else on, not I suddenly jumped in and did all of this all at one time.
what made you decide to add the 3rd podcast?
I was writing, I had started writing the adult dystopian book, and I started the dystopian book, and then I started landing my fiction, um audiobooks. So it was like all that happened kind of around the same time. I started writing the first book because I wasn't landing any fiction contracts for audiobooks and I wanted to. So I'm like, I'll just write it myself. And then I landed a fiction book and I was talking to the author about, the ideas and how they came up with their book and like all these things. And I was like, man, I could do this in a podcast. And so that's what I did. And so my first several guests that I had on the podcast were all people that I had narrated for. Roxy Eloise was my first one. I've done 2 books for her so far. Her series is an ongoing series. So the next book comes out in like March or April. I talked to Julie Rockwell really early on, who I narrated quite a few books for her. I also talked to Jason Duro, who I had interacted with on TikTok. I did not narrate his audiobooks, he did his own, but I talked to him really early on. I talked to Golden Angel really early on, who I'd also interacted with a bunch on TikTok. And so then I kind of just kept going with it because I was learning so much as I would ask, what tips and tricks do you have? What's the best piece of advice and the worst piece of advice? Actually, at the beginning, it was just the best piece of advice. And then I started asking the worst later because some of them gave that as well. And I was like, ooh, that's interesting to see like the play on
Yeah,
each
yeah,
other.
yeah.
So then I just kind of kept going with it. And I've learned a ton in the time that I've been doing it for what to do, what not to do. I learned that I definitely didn't want to go the traditional route, at least the traditional way of like querying forever and not putting your book out there and all that. I would much rather be like the ones that either A, stay self published forever or get picked up. Like Sarah Kate just got one of her entire series got picked up at one time. She finished the series, a publisher came in and bought the whole thing. And then I'm like, I'm not opposed to that way, but I would rather be making money now instead of spending weeks, months, years querying a book to possibly not even ever be able to publish that book. I had no interest in doing that. So, yes, I realized that that meant I had to pay for all of it myself. Um, so I paid for the promotion I was willing to pay for. I made my own cover. I formatted it myself. I learned how to do all of these things, knowing also that if I couldn't figure it out myself, I was willing to put in the money to pay someone to do it for me. I
Yeah.
just happen to be a very technological individual and I figured it out. So,
Well, there's a whole lot more tools now than there were when I
oh
first
yeah.
started in 2016. Like there's
Yeah.
I mean, Atticus didn't even exist then. Like there, there was just it's changed so much. It's so much easier to be an indie author now and to
Mhm.
do all the things than it was years ago, which I think is cool. So
I'm also really good at Googling. So, like, as I made a very terrible version of my cover first that I spent like an entire weekend trying to make. And I was like, this does not, it looked like 90s, maybe not even fantasy series. It looked very 90s, like late
mhm.
90s book cover. That's how the first version looked. And I was like, you need to, if you don't want to go to a publisher, that's fine. But your book needs to look appropriate to the genre. It needs to look not necessarily like a you know, a person cover or like the item cover with a bunch of stuff, which is what I was trying to do initially. But I was like, it needs to look like it belongs, one, as part of the genre, and two, as like the series needs to look like it ties together. So then I spent a few days just Googling like fantasy book series and looking at the similarities between the books in the series, like what makes them look like a series and like all of this. And then I actually designed all 7 book covers at the very beginning. So I have all of the covers already completely done and made. I did it in Canva. Um, yeah. So again, I'm a little bit crazy. So
No crazier than any other indie authors. This has been fantastic. Is there anything else that you want to say before we close?
I think I need to stop.
Because we're closing in on 2 hours, and I want to be respectful of your time because we were already chit-chatting for like 30 minutes before the interview.
Oops.
It's totally fine. It's like I said, it's loose, it's open-ended. I've had hour-long chats before the recording, 2-hour chats after the recording. It's all okay. That's why I can only do one a day now.
Yeah.
I probably need to tighten up the format.
Yeah, I feel like on some of mine, I'm suddenly like, I'm dying of heat stroke. We need to get off of this right now. It happens, and I don't remember if yours, I know I ended one recently, and when I went back to listen to it, it was like suddenly I'm like, "Okay, well, I think we're done now," and they were just like, "Oh, okay."
I hope you're not dying of heat stroke in there.
No, I have my door open.
Well, that's
I
awesome.
learned that when I'm doing these interviews, I can leave the door open, and it is much more breezy in here.
And we can't even tell because through the magic of StreamYard, they have audio I don't remember. They have some kind of audio processing that they're doing to block out extraneous noises to make it
Mhm.
sound like we are in sound booths when I'm in my kitchen.
I am in a sound booth on a professional microphone.
I am not. Do we sound the same or similar? I don't know. We'd have to put a poll up because the end result sounds pretty good to me. So can only assume that it's sounding professional and good. I went through enough drama before I figured out how to achieve that. So that's my little victory. Thank you
But
so much, Freya, for sticking around and talking about your podcast and all the amazing things that you are doing. And I hope that you'll come back at some point in the future and we can see how the podcasts are doing, how the books are doing, and what else you're doing, because maybe you'll have a new podcast at that time. So thank you so much, and thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed this special presentation. I don't normally cut interviews into 2 parts, but this was a special situation and I wanted to make it easier for you to access the information in it, or bookmark it. Or I don't know if you can bookmark it or favorite it or what. If you can, cool. Yeah. So I hope that you'll be back. We'll have another fantasy author and another fantasy book to talk about next week. And just a bit of an update on my own books. The Kickstarter for Stars and Angels Sing, which was my Christmas book, it actually successfully funded. So there'll be a lot more about that. And the characters are trying to convince me to put it out on retail. It's sort of very close to my heart, and I wasn't going to do a wider release, but Rand is insistent that it would be a good idea. So there might be I might be talking about that soon too. So we'll see. Thank you so much. Have a great day or a great night wherever you're listening. And again, I'm Melinda Kucsera, an indie fantasy author, and Freya Victoria was here talking about podcasts, social media scheduling, and many other things besides. Thank you.